one, if you're frantically clicking on the resources tab at the moment, trying to find the resources, they're not there just yet. There's a reason. Apologies. Hang on a second. You've got today, you're going to have to get some of the materials via a link. We can't download them direct, but it got so complicated to give you the stuff you need at the start and the stuff you need at the end that we sent you everything in one go. If you want to give yourself the best experience of today, please don't open files until you're told to do so, as some of them contain the answers. So in other words, we want to make sure that at the end of the session you have got everything, and that will include all the marks and how they were allocated and so on. But obviously, to make the session work really well, you want to try marking it without knowing what the answers are. So the only thing you need to open at the start of this session today is the delegate booklet. And you will probably look down your list of files you've downloaded or linked to and not see it there. And that's because it has got a ridiculously long title, right, which is the whole thing. In other words, Pearson International A-Level Getting Ready to Teach Information Technology. And then it says at the end of all that lot, delegate booklet. Okay, so I just want to warn you of that at the moment. That's the only one you need to open now. I'll tell you when to open other ones as we go along. Okay, so I'll ask Farina to open that, make that link available, please, and to put it also in the meeting chat, so you have it in two places. And I will now just go on with a couple of housekeeping matters. Welcome back if you were here on Tuesday for the first module, and so you probably know everything. But if you're new to this today, just to point out, my name is Malcolm Holmes. I'm a senior examiner with Pearson Edexcel. I've been doing examining in one role or another for about 30 odd, 40, even 40 odd years now, starting as a marker, ending up as a rather elderly examiner. Oh yes, and the other thing is that the slides for today, I should point out, the link, don't look at the original one. We've had to amend it ever so slightly. So there's an updated slide set available on a different link. So that was it. So that's me anyway. I'm working today from home, and so is Faina, and so the two of us are looking after things, but we're the only ones, so please be patient with us as we try to sort things out as we go along. There may be the odd pause. Don't worry, we've not gone away. We're still here. Okay. What was the other thing that's significant for this morning? Oh dear. Do apologize for this cough. This just suddenly started. Hang on. We will be recording this, and people have said, and since we moved to the Zoom platform, I didn't realize things had changed. On Monday, Tuesday, I said, you'll get an email with the link. That was wrong. How you get the recording is very simple. You just log back in using the link you've just used today. Okay, so to get the recording from Monday, you can get that one now. Just use the link we sent you for that training session, and that will get you back in, and you will see on the screen then an introductory screen with a blue box saying watch recording, and you can watch the recording. The recordings are processed and checked, so they won't be there immediately after the training. Allow 24 hours for the recordings to be sorted out, and then they'll be available to you. So that is a little correction of what I told you last time. Two things came up. One lady asked about the data files, or gentleman, it might have been, of course, asked about the data files, and I said I'd find out about it, and I have had no joy whatsoever. I do apologize for that, but I haven't been able to find out where they are. I will pursue it further, okay, and see what happened. And the other question that came up from last time was what happens if we're using Chromebooks, or if we're using, for example, Dreamweaver online. Now there is actually a Pearson solution to this, all right, and later on towards the end I will post up a link to the resource for those who need it. So if you're worried about having to use the internet during the assessment, please don't. All right, we have got a solution to that, and I'll post that up at the end of the training today so you can see it, or and you can then follow the link. It's on the Pearson website, so there should be no problems with that. Okay, I think that concludes the questions we had outstanding from Tuesday's session. So we can get going, I think. Yeah, right. I'm going to turn the camera off because basically it takes up a lot of bandwidth for some people and therefore spoils the audio. So to get a better quality audio, we're just going to have that and no camera. Right. All right, getting started. Today is all about assessing and marking and how we do it, and hopefully, therefore, as a result, how you will do it, guided by us. And we'll look at different types of mark schemes, different types of assessment processes, and try and explain the most baffling of all, that's levels marking, which is everyone's worry. Okay, slides. Our aims today then, understand the objectives again, just quickly look over those. We're going to have an English lesson. You'll wonder what that's about, but we'll soon see why. And then we're going to use the mark schemes and look at about any other support you can get. Here's our agenda for the day. We've got several activities. You've got 6 activities today. So you're going to be a lot more busy than you were on Tuesday. And we'll come back to those. You saw this on Tuesday. If you just joined us today for this training session, then by all means have a quick read of that, but I'm not going to repeat it because we did that on Tuesday. The specification, if you haven't downloaded that, then that's the next thing you need to download this morning. And for those who've just joined us, please don't open anything in the download options unless I ask you to do so. The only 2 things I'm asking you to open at the moment are the delegate booklet and the specification. And as I said to the people who are here at the start, the file name for the delegate booklet is ridiculously long, and so you'll probably have to expand your window to actually see the right file name. Okay, we mentioned this, but it's important we go over this bit on Tuesday. We go through it again. We have 4 assessment objectives, and they are demonstrating different things. So the first one, AO1, is simply recall, really, what you know. And can you just tell us that you know that? Straightforward, no nonsense, AO1. AO2 is application. So taking something you know, can you then actually apply it to a problem? All right. And so that is sort of taking, practically using knowledge. AO3 is analyze and evaluate. In other words, weigh up, judge, far more sophisticated, because not only do you have to look at something, but you have to sort of say, well, okay, is this the best solution? Is there an alternative solution? And analyze ones usually require you to use the word because somewhere in your answer. Right? That's a very useful, or variations of the word because that basically allows you to explain what's going on. So when we come to that, we'll look at that later as well. Another thing we'll look at in due course. And then use analysis and evaluation to design solutions is the most high-level skill that we want them to do. In other words, here's a problem, and now we don't want you just to solve it. We want you to do it in a good way. So there is an element of a practical application in AO4, but there's also an element of understanding the needs of the problem and how most effectively to solve it. So that's very important too. Okay, then how do those divide up? Well, here's a slightly different variation of what we looked at on Tuesday. Overall, as a percentage of the whole international A level, AO1 takes 10% of the marks in Unit 1, very little in Unit 2, and 5% in Unit 3 of the overall marks. So you might be sitting there thinking, okay, that means overall 17% of marks are for recall and showing knowledge. Not a very high percentage at all. AO2, the application of that knowledge to an issue, a problem or something, carries 38% of the marks overall. And as you might logically work out, is going to be featured in the Unit 2 practical paper and the Unit 4 practical paper. Obviously, these are practical skills, so therefore they're going to be demonstrated in the practical exam. Analysis isn't so great. It's 12% of the total mark. All right, and so therefore that will be a breakdown, nothing really significant, spread evenly across the two theory papers, really, paper 1 and paper 3, unit 1 and unit 3. And finally, the design element, the really being the really creative bit, appearing in unit 2, but also appears strongly, very strongly, in unit 4. So it's not just about databases, it's about designing effective databases and user interfaces and all the other features around it, and communicating the results effectively in how the reports are produced and so on, like that. It's not just a case of slap some stuff in a database, get some sort of vague printout, and that'll do. Okay, there is a design element to that. Right, I won't dwell on this. We talked about all the content, so I'm not going to dwell on this at all. But just if anyone's not here on Tuesday, just a very quick run through of what's on each of the papers. So paper 1, unit 1, is a traditional written paper. It's 2 hours long. Okay, it takes 50% of the first year marks and 25% of the overall total marks. And it covers traditional IT topics and issues like hardware and software, networks, the online environment, IT systems, data and databases, wider issues. And this bit here is the same actually for all 4 units. Okay, at the bottom it tells you my type of questions you're going to get: multiple choice, short open response, and extended open response. And we'll talk about all of those apart from multiple choice today. So I'll just deal with the multiple choice one very, very quickly here. Obviously, these tend to be ones where you obviously got 4 statements, 1 of which is correct, 1 of which is highly unlikely, and 2 of which are probable. That's the usual balance of the multiple choice, and it's useful to know that thinking so that when a candidate's trying to make a judgment, they can actually work in inverse way. They can say, well, what one can I discard as being the least likely answer? So in the multiple choice, okay, I can see here I've got 4 options. Which one is least likely? Let's get that one out of the way. That leaves you 3 to choose from, and then from those 3, which seems to be the most likely of those 3. Okay, so it's a simple approach. And as we mentioned on Tuesday, if you're answering a multiple choice and you make a mistake and you want to change your mind, the exam paper tells you what to do on the front and in the question. But if you get really stuck, just write in the answer. My choice is A, my choice is B. So it's really clear to anyone looking at it what your final decision was. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that, to make it clear what your choice was. Unit 2, which is held in the first year of the exams, held in the first year of the course, a 3-hour practical paper, and this is going to be all to do with web design, and that's going to be pretty straightforward in that sense. But we should point out again that the very important thing here is design. It's not just being able to do it. It's not just being able to slap the thing down and say, yeah, I'll put some stuff on a page. Here it is. All right. It's got to have, all right, an element of both functionality. Right? Does it work? But also creativity. Does it actually engage the person who's looking at the web page? Is it fit for purpose? Does it allow for people with different disabilities? There are a whole range of stuff that comes up there, which is in the specification, which we would expect to be seeing demonstrated and understood during the exam. So therefore, please bear that in mind. The paper consists of 2 parts, a theory written paper part and a practical part with data files, which you then submit. I'll wait till I get to Unit 4 and I'll talk about that a bit more. So bear in mind that what I'm telling you in a minute about Unit 4 also applies to Unit 2. Unit 3 is in the second year of the course. It's part of the another 25%, another shared quarter. Okay, in this case, you've got information technology in various ways developing. It's very much what's happening in the future as well, what's happening now, as well as some building blocks ready for Unit 4. So for example, topic 12 is a building block of manipulating data to help when you get on to Unit 4's work. Again, it's a written paper, it gets sent off, all right, and it's basically the same, except there are no multiple choice at this level. So the multiple choices appear at Unit 1 level. Unit 4 then, and this some of the comments I'm making here will also apply to Unit 2. You have a set of files provided to the students. They're given a set of problems. Right, they will have both a written paper element and they will have the practical element of the thing. At the end of the examination, they will be expected to place their files into a single folder, which is then got, I'll pause just so you're ready for it, has got the center number, the candidate number, and the candidate name in the file name. So the file of the final work for Unit 2 and Unit 4 will be center number, candidate name. These will then be zipped, please. You don't have to zip them, but it makes our life, our end, much easier if you do. Very much easier for us. So if you want to keep a happy examiner, zip your files up, right, and then upload them to what you call learner work transfer. But us on the assessment side of things will call learner work assessment. It's the same platform, just seen from two different directions. You see it as an upload feature, we see it as a download feature. And if you can get those files off as quickly as possible, the great advantage is, of course, those will be seen within moments of them arriving on learner work transfer. So we can get on with marking that element of the paper. Your paper, of course, the written part, has still got to make its long journey across the globe to Yorkshire, where it will be processed. So I'm conscious I wasn't looking at chat then. Let me just see everything else in chat. There's something. No, we're okay. I was saying, I should have said at the start, if you want to put something in chat, that's fine. But can you wait to one of the boards pauses in the process when you're doing one of the assessment tasks, and that'll be easier. If you just joined us, welcome. Please download the files using the link that's in the resources tab, or if you look in the chat, there is also a link to the resources. Please only open the delegate booklet, which is the one with a stupidly long file name, and only open the specification. Please don't open any other files at the moment. Okay, right. We're going to have an English lesson. All right, these are doing words. All right, and it's important the candidate understands that. In them, you'll see a reference to something called an artifact. An artifact is any product that the candidate has produced in any form or fashion. It certainly doesn't have to be a solid object. So it could be a web page, that would be an artifact. It could be an image. It could be a database file. Those are regarded as artifacts in terms of the descriptors we're doing here. Okay, so when you see that, think in terms of something that the candidate has produced and we can look at, all right, and understand. And there are variations on them, but if you make sure your candidates know that this lot, and there's another lot coming up, that lot are all doing words, and therefore they should say it's not knowledge. All right, you might have to have knowledge to do it, that's acceptable, but the most important thing, the key thing to demonstrate is doing the task that's there. Some are very easy. For example, amend might simply require them to make a change to something that's already there. So maybe we have to amend the HTML coding because at the moment it doesn't work. And therefore, that just simply requires a change. It's very straightforward. Okay. Others might be extremely sophisticated. And there is quite a bit of important difference. Construct, all right, we would usually regard as being part of the database structures. That command word is most likely to crop up in a database task, construct, where you're having to put together an artifact, all right, in some form or fashion. Usually, of course, a data entry form. You have to also obviously describe and define your database tables, and so construct. Whereas create is usually, as you might guess, more creative, right? So construction is practical. Construct a practical task, mechanical task, if you like, especially with a database, because really, you're just going to have to get it right and it works. Whereas create involves some small element of also including, all right, some sort of imagination, creativity within it. That word comes from it, and so on. And that will be a point. Okay, so those are important. So we're not going to spend too long on that, but it is, especially as your candidates might be candidates who haven't got English as a first language, quite important for them to understand that these command words are really, really important. So those are the doing command words. There's some more of them. And you can obviously, they're also in the specification. And so here we have some examples of how they might appear. All right, so in Unit 1, create a data flow diagram. Here is Amna's partially completed high-level design for the system. Complete this high-level design. Develop, notice things have been truncated, I should point out. Unit 2, develop a prototype web page. And Unit 4, develop the dog walking database to add functionality. And so therefore they're required to do data structure that minimizes data duplication, uses correct data types and primary keys, and enforces referential integrity. So there's development followed by a whole lot of criteria they have to meet. And obviously the assessment will be how well they've met that criteria. So there are doing words. Extended writing. There are basically, right, 3 extended writing words that really matter. Analyze and recommend, right? Assess, evaluate. Now, there also another way of putting it, analyze, is pull apart. Take it apart. Examine the elements in detail and then make a recommendation of what's going to happen or actually do something with it. So analysis is pulling apart. So for example, we might analyze the structure of a database and say why it's not suitable for a given context. Okay, that's the thing. Recommend what should be done to that structure to make it more suitable. Okay, so you can see 2 parts there. So we take a database, we pull it apart and say, well, actually, this is not going to be very suitable in this particular context we've been given. And therefore, I recommend we do X, Y, and Z. Okay, analyze and recommend. Assess can also be another word to use here in your mind, is judge. If analyze was pull apart, assess is judge, right? And of course, we talk about assessment as being something we do when we judge people's performance, right? So in other words, we might have, for example, assess how well the web page and HTML code have been used to create an effective page layout and design. So in other words, how good is this for a particular audience? How good is this for the purpose we want to see? How good is it for the person that wanted it? And making a judgment. Evaluate is also very much up there with those, all right, in terms again, but it's really the same as assess in many sorts of ways, except assess appears in units 2 and 4, and evaluate appears in units 1 and 3. Okay, so the extended writing, complicated words are primarily found on the 2 practical units. Other possible words here are describe, discuss, explain, give, identify. There's others as well. But these all require you to spend some time with your students actually saying, well, what are we going to do if this comes up? Because the most common thing we see when we're marking papers is people have ignored the command word. I have noticed over the years it's far more common to see them actually, if we're looking at a written paper, we see they've actually highlighted the command word on the written paper, and then sometimes you see little scribbled notes alongside by the candidate. There's certainly fine. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't do that. To make sure they stay on course for the command word and knows what they're going to have to do. So they've said, oh, I've been asked to explain. All right, that is probably going to need me to include a because somewhere in the answer, and so or some similar word, and they might have noted that down at the start. Okay, right. We're zooming along nicely, by the way. If you're wondering why we're going so fast, it's because we've got a pretty heavy thing at the end. And I found the last few times I've done this training session, I've not left enough time for it. So this time I'm trying to go a bit faster at the start to give ourselves the required time we're going to need for activity 6, which takes quite some time. Okay, so here we go. Activity 1 is in your delegate booklet. Okay, if you turn to your delegate booklets now, or well, turn to them, get the PDF open. It's page 4 of the delegate booklet. It's page 4 of the delegate booklet. Okay, I hope someone correct me if I've got the wrong page, but I'm pretty sure it is. Okay, and what we want you to do is to this. Here are the units 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which command word goes with which one or more units? So where would we find these command words? It's a sort of quick test of were you paying attention to the previous slide? Okay. And then also we want to know which of these is the correct description, which of these here is the correct description of that command word. So where would we find this command word? Which unit would we find it in, or units? And which is the correct description to go with the command word? So just drawing lines, you know, if you think, and I'm not giving anything away here, if you think unit 1 goes with assess, and you think assess goes with there, right, then that's how you're going to join them together. Okay, so just a quick one, this 2 or 3 minutes, and have a look and see what you think. That was just an example. I'm not promising it's the answer. Okay, so have a look at those. 5 minutes. We'll resume at 25:2. Okay, which command word goes with which unit and with which description? Faina, there's a comment above that's appeared saying that the link is for computer science. Could you look into that, please? Hi, Kieran. Question from Faina. Is it that the link goes to the wrong resources or to the wrong slides? Thank you. Could you let Faina know in the chat? We've had 5 minutes. Let's see how we're doing. This is how it works out. I should point out there is a change between these two screens. It's not immediately obvious, but we have rearranged things. So that's what you were asked to do, is what you've got in your booklet. And this is how it works out, basically. Uh, uh, the links might help as well. So in other words, assess can be found in Unit 2, and it can be found in Unit 4. Right? Analyze and recommend can be found in Unit 2. It can be found in Unit 4. Lovely straight lines I've got here. Okay. And these two here, give careful consideration, is a definition of assess, and examine elements in detail and provide support is the definition for those with units 1 and 3, and it's review information they bring together to form a conclusion. So it's important, I think. You may wonder why we're doing this, but basically it is there for our purposes, to get your students to think a bit more about what they're being asked to do. It's quite important. There's too much of the, oh, I've seen a sort of prompt here. I'm just going to write down what I think is wanted, without actually sitting down and thinking, is this what I'm being asked to do? Is this what I'm really expecting to be able to do? Or is it something different? So that's the important thing there. Okay, right. Okay, moving on. Oh, I can't move the slides because I've done the wrong thing. Hang on. Right. Okay. Right. This is slightly different. We're going to turn things on its head in a sense, but it's worth doing. So here you have, and it's in your delegate booklet on page 5. It's in the delegate booklet on page 5, and it's on the screen here as well. So you've got two places for it. Here are some answers to questions. What was the command word that went with these answers? Okay, so in other words, and we want to make life a bit easier, it's either explain or it's describe. We're not going to do any more than that. So just decide for those 6 questions whether you think the command word is explain or describe. Don't think I need to add anything to that. So I'll let you get on with that bit. Okay. Oh, timing. Sorry. I think it only needs 5 minutes. 1:45. We'll resume at 1:45. Okay, folks, I think we can move on. Here is the answers to this. And remember, I gave you a clue I told you that because is a very useful word for explain. So if you've been following that, you would have spotted that 2 and 6, 2 and 5, 2 and 5 have becauses in them. So, okay, so they save money is the opening statement because, right? Therefore, they blah blah blah. Explain. Number 3, Annika only has to carry 1 device for all the functions. So, well, if you like, you could substitute the word because there, because it is less weight when running around, and so on. So explain. And 5, the bank does not need to employ trained data management staff because the cloud storage company looks after it. So we're emphasizing that's a very common situation where if we've got an explain, we're looking for a statement, the thing that's in brown on there, and we're looking for a reason. The other ones are describe, where there can be 1 or 2 points made. All right, so they're descriptive questions. All right, so usually you can, from the number of marks, you know how many points you're meant to make. So if a describe question has 2 marks, then you're looking to basically make 2 points, 2 descriptions. Right, so if you take for example, number 6, we can look at number 6 there. Question 6, the employee could enter their username, all right, is one of the things they're going to describe, and then they made another point, a subsequent point, and then use a RFID reader to read an identity card to confirm who they are. So there's 2 key points being made there in answer to that question, whatever it was. Obviously, we don't know what the question was, but they're there. All right, so that will be one of the describes. This one has multi-user licenses, all right, and then tells you what they're like, all right, with a per seat license, all right, that is a second point. Now, in this case, this might have been a 4-mark question with 1 mark for identifying what type of license it is and then giving a reason, all right, a per seat license, and then an expansion of it could be there. Those are how it could work. Right. Right. Hopefully you found that a little bit interesting, but perhaps we better go on with actually marking things now. More relevant. So mark schemes. Just to iterate, when the paper is written, you write the mark scheme. The paper is written sometimes 2, even 3 years ahead of it being sat. So once the paper has been sat, people like myself sit in a room, usually for 2 days, looking at the mark scheme and looking at some of the exemplar question answers, how people have answered the questions, and deciding, is the mark scheme needing updating? Is it fit for purpose? Have we not anticipated some possible answers? Has technology moved on and now we've got some new exemplars we hadn't known about when we wrote the mark scheme? All these things are importantly put in together. And then, having agreed all that, we then have another day or sometimes 2 days with the assessors, the markers, examiners, where we basically train them in that marking scheme. So the whole process of producing the mark scheme can take as much as 5-6 days, 2 days when the paper is being written, another couple of days with the senior examiners, and finally then a couple of days with the examiners having it explained to them, working through examples and stuff like that. Okay, we start with the simplest of type question, a points-based mark scheme. Very easy to apply, right? This one is extremely straightforward, no problem at all. You can see it's to do with the HTML, and basically there is a mark for setting the radius, a mark for getting the correct color as asked by the question, and 1 mark for the font size, all right? And in this case, it had to be 2.5, okay? It's unambiguous. Either those things are there or they're not. So obviously very easy to mark, and questions like this are usually marked by what we call clerical markers. They don't have to be experts in the subject. They just have to look for the right answer. If they get anything positive, then they will go on and pass it on to a more experienced marker. But most of the time, and obviously for you marking, it's dead easy. In other words, if the radius has been set to 10, the background to 1, font size at 2.5, we're going to get the mark. Now, as we talked about very briefly on Tuesday, a mark scheme like this might not actually involve in getting it actually to work, just have they set the correct criteria. All right. Other parts of the code may be wrong and it doesn't actually do anything, or as I demonstrated on Tuesday, because they forgot to put the images in the same folder as everything else, there were no images. But they get the mark because the coding for that particular item is correct. And that's the important thing to bear in mind. They have done the task we asked them to do. We're not going to penalize them for further problems that may have arisen downstream when they actually go to actually run the code and so on, run the HTML. All right, this is a slightly different one. This is the other variation of a points-based mark scheme, right? And this is what we talked about earlier with describe. That first of all, they have to have a description, right? And then hopefully they have some sort of expansion. So they have one mark for the description and one mark for the expansion. So, for example, Annika could use online applications, one mark, and then why? To allow her to work collaboratively. The good old because can appear here again, of course, sometimes. But then the second one, Annika could use syncing software, one mark, to keep documents on the server at the Education Centre up to date, one mark. Now, notice that those were exemplars. In the purple box, you're looking at exemplars. And in the additional guidance, the red box, you'll notice it says any digital device will be okay for a mark, all right, providing, of course, it has an appropriate response going with it. So if they have a digital device listed, all right, or if it might be, then they could have a mark for that. All right, and here device is used in a very broad sense. All right, and then they get a mark for the response that goes with it. So there's not an exclusive marking scheme there. It does allow for other examples. Right, levels based. Oh yeah, right. Now then, this is the thing I think gives most examiners when they first come to mark papers the hardest time, and I'm assuming you as teachers in the classroom it must be very hard as well. So I'm going to go through this quite slowly, and apologies if some of this has been covered before or you know it, but I think it's important for people who are new that they really get an idea of what's going on here. A levels-based mark scheme has basically two elements. It has level descriptors which are generic and could be applicable to a whole variety of questions, right? So they are usually only required once on an exam paper. It's the same descriptors all the way through the exam paper. All right. The second element is what's called the indicative content. All right. Now, indicative content is just literally that, an idea of what might be in a candidate's answer. It's not, absolutely not required content. All right. It would be impossible. When you look at the list of things in an indicative content box, you could say it would have to be an incredibly talented student that actually covered everything in the indicative content. That would be, it's an impossible task. You can't do it. We're only looking for them to have covered some of the indicative content, so that basically we say, for example, here on the screen you can see there was it's only the beginning of the indicative content. The question must have been something about privacy, and so therefore they have got some ideas of how they might have expressed privacy, okay, down there. You'll see this better later on, okay, when we go further on. Then that's the indicative bit. Now we moved to the levels descriptors. The first and most important thing to understand is the descriptors are for the top mark in that level. Okay? Descriptors are for the top mark. So they are level 1. Those descriptors are for 4 marks. Level 2, those descriptors are for 8 marks. And level 3, those descriptors are for 12 marks. So we would be expecting something less than those descriptors for the lower marks in that level. there is a terrible tendency for people to take those descriptors and start applying them to the bottom mark, not the top mark. That's an important thing to bear in mind. There are several bullet points in the descriptors. In this case, there are 3 different things that could be in the answers. We emphasize again, it's a could be. These are not an exclusive list. Like the indicative content, it's what we would like to see, but we ought to be flexible in allowing for variations because these are usually extended writing answers. So therefore, okay, the perfect candidate will be meeting all those bullet points in the level which it sits in. That's the perfect candidate. Great, wonderful, very good. Unfortunately, we don't get many perfect candidates. Quite a lot might start answering the question badly, and you initially, as you read it, you think, oh, this is a level 1 mark. But then they get better and they progress, and by the time they've finished, you're thinking, oh, it's level 3. All right, or you can say, well, they've made some points from level 3 and some points from level 2. So it's a mix and match situation. So these are all very important things we have to consider when we're looking at this. However, things that we can help you with. Level 1 will usually be characterized by being chaotic. Right? You are looking at something where basically the candidate has gone for the scattergun approach. Here are some ideas, things I know about whatever this question happens to be about. Maybe they've given a bullet point answer. Maybe they've just said this, then followed by that. There's no real link between the things. It's just basically a whole collection of thoughts and ideas. You could almost say it might even read like an essay plan. Here are things I might be writing about later, except this is actually my answer. All right. So the basic feel when you're looking at it is, yeah, this person knows something limited about whatever the question happens to be about, but really has no way of putting it together. On the other hand, jumping to the other end of the scale, level 3 is going to be the student who is confident. Right? They know their subject, they know what it's about, and as you read it, you can sense, you can feel that, you can see that they know they're on top of it, they're in command of it, and so on. And obviously level 2 sits in the middle there. Now those aren't marking criteria, they're just ways of helping you get into the level's descriptors. Okay. You may find it helpful when you're marking these to actually note which of the bullet points has been met. Maybe 2 of them have been met in level 2 and 1 of them is met in level 3. So you think, oh, okay, this is just about, there's a bit of a beginning there of level 3 work. Perhaps we give it 9 marks because it's just moving out of level 2. Equally, you can also have moving back the other way. In other words, maybe you've seen some pretty awful starting stuff. It really is level 1. But they have then gone on to demonstrate some good skills in level 2. And you might think, well, actually, now I'm going to think about giving the bottom end of level 2 5 or 6 marks. This is not an exact science. It is very much one of having to get your head around the variety of students. And we would expect candidates to, obviously an examiner would be expected to be able to get either the right mark or the adjacent mark, right? And same for you. If you're doing this, we don't expect you to necessarily get bang on, but we would expect you to be in the right level. That's very important, and so on. Now, that may not have helped much. I hope it's helped some, because really the only way you can get on with levels-based marking is by actually doing it. One big plus now of the way you can see the past papers is you can now, of course, see candidates' answers. You can see what mark they've got, and you can then try and work out, well, how did that work out in the level marking scheme? Gives you an idea. So exemplification by your candidates actually doing the work, so on. Sometimes we have a combination of points-based and levels-based. This is quite common in paper 2 and paper 4, where there are definite things we're expecting. So those are getting levels, points-based marks, like down the side here. All right, that's straightforward. That's what we want. Notice that sometimes there can be a choice. So, for example, on this last one here, at least one semantic element. So as long as one of those is there, they're going to get the mark. They don't have to have any more than one. All right. This one is like alt tags are used on one image, so therefore they're just demonstrating the skill. They don't have to demonstrate it across all the examples, right? And so that can all be there. The example here also a lot of tolerance. Header includes a JPEG, all right, but do not award if the image is blurred or skewed. In other words, there is an element of quality there as also implied. But the second part of it then is a levels-based mark scheme. Okay, a mini one, all right, and this one asks a topic: does it adhere to component layout design? And you've got 3 statements. Obviously, in this case, there's only one mark to think about. You just have to decide: is it level 3, level 2, or level 1? Is it 1, 2, or 3 marks? Okay, it's as simple as that. And application of the CSS, the cascading style sheets, to control presentation. Has it been done? No. Yes, very well. Okay, that's basically what you're asking about. So that can be a combination hybrid one. Okay, so here's a simple one we're going to look at, and the mark scheme. Our interest here is both how the mark scheme is presented and how it is. This is also in your delegate booklet, and it's on page, let me get there. It's on page 6. Okay, so here's response 1. What have we got? We got a command word, describe. Fine, that means straightforward. 2 features of a smart TV's user interface. Therefore, we're looking for a statement and an expansion, right? A statement and expansion. Now, notice the question originally said, digital devices such as Sarah's TV have features to assist those with disabilities, right? All right. Now, we want the interface that assists people with a visual impairment. Now, notice the additional guidance down here in the red box. Quite often, what a candidate will say was, it's got X, which will help someone with a visual impairment, all right? Well, we told them that in the question, so they can't have that as a mark. And we also have under this category, we have the longer, higher, stronger, faster. Be careful when a statement is very generic, right? Like a statement like, this would be better. If there's nothing else in the answer, better than what? If this would be faster, faster than what? And so on down through the list of things. So be careful to watch out the fact that their answer is just so generic, it could apply to anything. There we have here in the mark scheme, various possible answers. Oh, sorry, one of the perils of being at home and working on our own is that someone at the door. Give me 2 seconds just to check. Sorry about this. That's okay, sorted. Right, okay, so now you'll see some statements. Now, notice that there's quite a lot of statements there that they could have come up with, all right? And notice that the expansion goes with them. Now, sometimes you can mix and match. Sometimes you can say, well, actually, the opening statement can actually go with any of the expansions. And other cases, all right, the 2 are linked. So if we were to choose voice guide, which is the first one here, right? It will read on-screen text, give information about the channel programs, okay? So the statement, mark 1, a voice guide, and then its purpose to read on-screen text, okay? So there's two elements to it. Now, that can scarcely go with another one because it's very specific, okay? So these statements are dependent. They're not interdependent, they're independent. They are interdependent. Audio description, 1 mark, provides a description of the scene setting, right? Again, the expansion can't go with a voice guide similar. No, it's not. It's a different thing. Audio description is a description of the scene setting, so therefore that cannot go with anything else. It has to go in that pair, okay? Sometimes, though, you will see where you can actually say, well, actually, I can take the opening statement and any of the expansions would fit, and that is acceptable where it's allowed for. Okay, so let's look at this candidate. What have they done? The screen can be zoomed into or out of. So we're looking for some sort of reference to a screen and zoom. And if we look down here, all right, screen zoom, enlarge. The screen can be zoomed into or out of, allowing people to zoom into important parts of the screen, enlarge menus, etc. Makes it easier to read text and see the information on the screen. That's fine. That will fit with that expansion there. So we can say that one and that one goes with that expansion there. Okay. Then the second statement they made, the brightness of the screen can be adjusted. So we're looking for change brightness. Okay, it's there in the mark scheme. So if a high brightness, all right, bothers someone, they can decrease it and set it at a point that won't hurt their eyes. Okay, that would be okay with to allow more comfortable viewing. Okay, so obviously there is, and I think I've covered it over, but it says relieve eye strain. So they got, that is a really straightforward one. It's going to get the marks, no problem at all. Okay, and it gets 4 marks because it's straightforward. Okay, these are pretty straightforward. I'm not going to spend too long. You're going to have a chance to do one yourself now, and then we'll talk about it, but I don't think it's going to need long. So 5 minutes, please. Here's the second one. Oh, sorry, I've got to clear the marks. There are markings all shouldn't be there. All right, here's the second one. Okay, candidates there on the response to. You've got response to in your booklet as well. It's on page 8. It's on page 8. So if you want it in the booklet, and I'll leave you till 10 past to mark that one. Okay, you've had a chance to look. Hopefully you've had some thoughts. We've given you this one because it's an interestingly borderline situation we're going to be in. So that's why it's here. The first answer we have, when clicked on a button housed over the TV, hovered over the TV, could speak up what the button does. We could take it that could speak up there, could speak up, can be, okay, voice guide. We could see that as voice guidance. All right, and you could say it then tells us what the button does. All right, and so we could think about, and I emphasize the think about, giving it 2 marks for the function. However, after a lot of discussion, we decided it was just borderline. It wasn't quite enough to get the 2nd mark. There had to be something specific, so like it read the text out, or it told you which channel you were on, or which program you had selected. It's a generic answer which could have been applied to lots of different products. It could easily have been applied to an information point on a laptop, and so therefore we didn't think it was specific enough to a smart TV. Right, so the important thing was the answer had to be in the context of a smart TV, and the answer was, okay, yes, it does apply to a TV, but it can also apply to a lot of other things. So we can only really give it 1 mark. The second one, the smart TV could have a microphone where Sarah could command in what she wants to do. So it looks like we have voice command. The command bit here looks okay. Command, what she wants it to do. And we got down the bottom here in the mark scheme, last bullet point, voice activated TV controls. All right. And again, it was this awful borderline thing. What specifics? There's no specifics there. What she wanted it to do. What, make a cup of tea? You know, obviously we wanted something specific about smart TV, like change channel. So that one gets 2 marks in total, 1 mark for each response. Okay. Okay. Moving on. Keep forgetting to cancel me drawings. Okay. Here's another one. And this one is on page 9 of your delegates booklet. On page 9 of your delegates booklet. All right. It's another points-based marking scheme. Right, and we can have a look into it. So this time we're going to look and see what the response 1 is like. Okay, and what is the task? So Himi uses a web hosting company to host and support his website. The company provides software tools to make both static and dynamic web pages. So that's our context set in. So obviously the context is in with that web hosting company and static and dynamic web pages. So that's easy, just state. Nothing complicated about that at all, right? 3 differences are, hang on, we're going to make comparisons, between static and dynamic web pages. So though the command word is easy, the task is slightly more difficult because we've got to compare static and dynamic web pages, okay? And here's our mark scheme. We've got various things, and again, like last time, it's unlikely the expansion or the point can be mixed and matched. Now notice this time there's no expansion, so this is just really straightforward. We want 1 or more of those points, and it's a 3-mark question. So we're looking for 3 separate, not duplicated answers. All right. So the first one is, okay, going to the response 1. Static is used in client-side, so we presume they're talking about static web pages. In client-side scripting, dynamic is used in server-side scripting. Okay. Let's have a look down here. The 4th bullet point seems to meet that criteria very nicely. The 4th bullet point. Static code is read, displayed by the browser, client, computer. Dynamic is server-side process. Yeah, okay, I think that can get a mark. We can give that a mark for that first one. Okay, that's the 4th bullet point. Next one, and we don't worry, they put something in brackets, which theoretically they're saying, well, we want to basically ignore it. Don't, if it's there, we'll read it. Okay, so the second point is if a candidate has crossed something out and not put anything else in its place, or has stuck something in brackets, we will look at it, see if it's actually useful. They've also, at the end of their answer to, they put a little arrow down to the third one, which we're not really sure about what that's all about, but we'll say wait and see. So, okay. Basically, they've actually, in the first bit of their answer, they're talking about types of static and dynamic. All right. And then they go on to say in answer two, static is user-friendly, dynamic used for web development. It's all a bit confusing, but you notice a little up arrow after dynamic. So the used for web development goes with that. Okay. That goes with it. If we look here, they have got static is written in HTML. All right, dynamic in server-side scripting languages. Now, they haven't got everything here, but they have mentioned, right, HTML and JavaScript. Oh, this looks okay. And so we can give them a mark for that one. All right? I don't know why they put it in brackets, but who cares? It's all right. We'll go with it. And they've actually got. So the next one, the final one is static is never changing, dynamic is changing existence. So I'm not sure why this arrow goes down here, but we're not going to pay any attention to it. Static is never changing, dynamic is changing. And the first bullet point here is static is fixed, dynamic alters with user actions. All right. And they're saying is changing with date, time. It is only an e.g. example. Static is never changing. Static pages, the first marking point, static pages content is fixed. Dynamic alters with users' actions. Well, they have actually got dynamic in the sense that they've talked about it changing. Okay, this is a low-level mark. Is question 2. Yeah, we'll give it. It wasn't quite there. It's one of those, well, I'd like to give that half, but we haven't got half marks. But to give it nothing would be mean. All right, so there is evidence there, and we got the first part of it right completely. And in never changing is same as fixed. Dynamic, they've actually got out that it's changing, but they didn't say why. Okay, 3 marks. Okay, right. Hopefully that was okay. You followed that. So here's one for you. Okay, this one. It's on page 10 of your answer booklet. Page 10 of your answer booklet. Again, we don't need very long, 3 or 4 minutes, because you now got used to this way of doing it. So 25 past at the most. I might start before then, actually. But 20, yeah. 3 minutes, folks. 3 minutes. We're running out of time again. Okay, let's move on with this one because it's pretty straightforward. This first statement, static web page is coded with HTML, whereas dynamic web page is coded with JavaScript. It's mark 0.3. We can give it a mark for that. Static web page is client-side scripting. Dynamic web page is server-side scripting. Go to the fourth, all right, bullet point on the mark scheme. Static coding, blah, 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 red displayed by browser computer. Dynamic is a server-side process. That's fine. Tick. Static web page is run by client machine. Dynamic is that's mark point O. It's the same mark point. So although it's a valid statement, but it's duplicating an existing mark point, and so we can't have no repetition of the same marking point. So in this case, a valid statement, but unfortunately duplicating a marking point we've already awarded, and so we've awarded mark 0.3, mark 0.4. This would also be mark 0.4, so therefore it can only be 2. Okay. This one comes from the practical paper. Okay, start of the practical paper, paper 2, right? And we want to know web pages contain external content. Explain how a tag can be used to add embedded content. All right, and again, there has to be a linked explanation. You'll see that there's 3 possible linked explanations here, right? And didn't clear my. Sorry, I've got some ticks sitting around. That's it. Okay. This you'll find on page 11 of your booklet. All right. And the first answer here, okay, they first will have to identify some sort of tag. In this case, the candidate has identified an iframe. So that is a valid tag that we want. So we can give 1 mark for that there. All right. And then it goes on to actually describe its purpose. So we're going to go with this one. The iframe tag can be used to embed another document in a fixed sized frame. Okay. The iframe tag creates an inline frame on a web page that can be of specified width and height, right? Which will go as being fixed size. That's okay because it's specified. That will do for fixed. That links to a source URL and displays the external content from that source inside the frame. So that first bit there is okay for fixed. This bit here is okay for dynamic embedding. So it can have 2 marks. It can have 2 marks. Okay, that's how that would work. So over to you for another one. Again, just a couple of minutes to look at it. Okay, here's another response. It's really quick to read, so I'll just give you 2 minutes. It's on page 12 of your booklet. I'm not going to be long because it's pretty straightforward, but it demonstrates another point. Okay, in this case, they have named a tag, embed. Okay, the embedded content will be visible in the web page. Doesn't really tell us anything about an embedded tag. Okay, it's just not enough, but they've also used another one that's got iframe here. Oh, right, hang on. That doesn't work. You can't do that. You can't have 2 mark 2. It has identified a tag, a single tag, and an expansion. So unfortunately, for this candidate, then they are not going to get more than 1 mark. And they can have that either for defining a tag as embed, talking about 10, or they can have it for the iframe. But they can't have 2 marks for talking about 2 tags. Okay, so it's 1 tag. Right, now for the last part of this session, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on looking at a Unit 2 question, which is quite complex. In the downloading, remember I told you not to download too much at one time. In your download you had today, just get this out of the way. Give me 2 seconds. Just open the stuff. In your download materials, you'll find you have got things now that you need to do things with. You want to make sure you can open question 4 response 1, which is a folder, and you can open question 4 response 2. Depending on how it's delivered, it may have come as zipped, so you may need to unzip that before you can use it. Okay, you want those there. All right, you want then further down in your resources, you want question 4 mark scheme. Okay, question 4 mark scheme and question 4 questions. Please don't open the other question 4 files because they are the answers, but you've got them there for you if you need them. So question 4 mark scheme, question 4 question, and the 2 folders, question 4 response 1, question 4 response 2. Okay, here is the question on the screen, on our screen now at the moment. Okay, Space Tech is an organization interested in space and technology. It needs a new web page. Yay! Right, a wireframe and style guide have been provided. And on this page, you can see the wireframe, okay, and what they wanted you to do with it. This is how it's going to be. And they provided the style guide, right, which if you download, is actually on page 14 of your delegate booklet if you want it. Questions on page 13, the delegate booklet. Page 14 is the style guide, right? And we have got a question. Yeah, sorry, have I got it? Yeah, here it is. This is what it should look like, all right? This is what the web page should look like if they got the right answer, right? Now, depending on your computer, you might have a slight variation on this, but it won't be dramatically different. Okay, that's what our final answer should look like. Okay, and we've got the design guide, and fine, that's cool. All right. How do we approach mounting it? Well, first of all, open up your question 4 response 1 in a browser and see, does the actual product look like what we were expecting? That's we got on screen here. Here we got a little picture of it as well. You've got it in your book. That's the first thing you're going to look at. Nothing else is happening at the moment, just looking at it. Now, if it looks dead like it, you're going to go, oh, yay, that's good. Probably we're going to get lots of marks being given away here. But if it isn't, that doesn't mean there's no marks. It simply means it's going to get harder to find the marks necessarily, because we have to give marks for everything that's achieved. Okay, so the second thing to do then is to look into the actual code, right here, the HTML, and say, does that actually meet our requirements of the question, what the question asked them to do? And notice that we have got certain very specific requirements from the style guide. The font had to be set to Verdana. The color had to be set to light gray, and everything had to be center aligned. Now, actually, if you look at the answer here, this one, that's done that, okay? And the color's right as well. So, things. Now, this overrides the browser view. If the coding has done what we wanted, we're going to give marks for it. Okay, we're going to give marks for it, regardless of how it actually appears. All right, so that's very important. Later on, we're going to have some levels marks, which will do with how it actually appears on the screen. So that will become later. So look at the browser, look at the text editor, look at the marking grid, see which marks you can award the marks. Okay, you have, all right, on page 16 and 17 a massive marking scheme. Okay, page 16 and 17, you have the mark scheme, okay, with a levels marked element to it at the end on page 17. Will you now take example 1, and if you want to be quite masochistic, the HTML code is on page 18. You've got it on page 18, or you can open it, obviously, in the materials you've been given. Will you now have a go at applying the mark scheme to evident candidate 1, response 1? Okay, now because of the size of this and time, I'm going to give you a good 10 minutes. We will resume at 22 when we look at how that could be marked. Okay, do bear in mind, if you wanted to, you can get the answers. Okay, they are in the resources we provided, but try not to. Try to see if you can do it without looking at the actual answers. Okay, see you at 22. again, I do apologize, and the assets folder wasn't added to your work, so therefore you do not get what you thought you're going to get. All right, so just briefly I will show you what it should have looked like. It doesn't make any difference because we can still so I'll stop sharing that. What your final page should have looked like, all right, it's gone now. Where's it gone? I'm so sorry about this. It should have looked like that. That's how it should have looked with the assets provided. Obviously, we didn't have them. But we're going to make an interesting... So we will make the best of a bad thing by working out, well, what marks can we award? Supposing that had happened for real. And let's see what marks we can award as a consequence of that problem having arisen. And see how we get on from there. So that's what it would have looked like. I'm going to have to take you back out of that now. And stop sharing that and go back to my screen. So, okay. There's another how response, how it should have looked. Okay. You can see quite a few things wrong with it. I apologize for that being missing. And let's see how we go for the marks. And now you're going to look at the code. All right. And in the code, we can award marks from the coding, which is, give me 2 seconds just to set things up here so I can see what we're going to do. Okay, the first mark point in the mark scheme was for, all right, setting a heading meta character, which is HTML5, which is on line 4. All right, and they have set it correctly, so that was fine. They haven't done the second item, so it doesn't get a mark. A3, they can get a mark from lines 66 and 77 of the mark scheme, of the coding that they put together. You can see it's there. They were asked to come up with one semantic element, right? And they have come up with, on page 66, all right, they've 66, 67, right, they've got section. Okay, they've used section, gets a mark. A4 was not set, which was going to be one banner size. The banners weren't correct. The hyperlink to the Mars row is present when you look closely. It's under the images and does work. Right? It is not in the nav bar, but it is a link. And the mark for A5 was to have the link. Right? Now it says a hyperlink has been added to the navigation bar, which links the bar. All right, so we were very torn about this one, and in the end we decided that we actually would give it because they have got a working hyperlink. It's just not in the navigation bar, which we can penalize later on. Okay, right. Moving on, A6. These 3 images are sized. What's it now? Obviously, due to the fact we haven't got the images, you wouldn't have given that mark on this occasion, and nor would you give an A7. All right, as neither of those are going to be working, right? But the background has been set, and we're not using the CSS, so we can give A8, A9, all right, is line 69 in the code, all right, and it has been set, so they can have that one. It's in the code. And that also applies to A10, all right? And there is a functioning email link which linked with, from the words copyright tech. Now, they actually, if you go down and look on lines 62, right, you see they have got an email link under contact us, all right? And if we went to the actual browser view, we would find something that would work. Okay, however, we've been kind already on a link when we did A5, and so we decided on this case it's still not quite correct, so they can't have it. A12. All right. The center text is not center aligned in the code or on screen, and the CSS files doesn't work because it's not referred to, so they don't get A14. All right, now again, we're going to have a slight variation on the marks that we got here. It won't be quite the same. There is enough evidence to say the solution is in parts fit for purpose and suitable for the intended audience. If we had allowed for the fact it was meant to look like this, like this, but it wasn't perfect. But it had basically, as you look there, you have things pointing out it would work. You'd obviously say, I don't think that's rubbish. But in terms of functionality, it's okay. And there is no real attempt to use the CSS, so we're not going to give a mark. We give 1 mark for that. It just comes from the HTML coding. So it's going to be a different mark to what I have there. I haven't worked it out now, and I do apologize. We are rapidly running out of time because the second problem has arisen, and there's nothing we can do much about it. This is how the second item should look like. So let's just have a look at this and see that obviously this is going to be judged to be a far better piece of work. All right, the text is center aligned. You can see that from the screen. You can mark an awful lot of this from the screen view. This is response 2. I'm afraid you haven't got response 2 in your folder. You've got response 1 twice. Sorry. I will see what can be done about following up on that. And if we can get response 2 out to you in some way via an email link with the folder assets attached. That would have been one we looked at now, but we can't because we haven't got the right materials. I am so sorry about that. Okay, it would, by the way, if you had it, he got full marks. It does everything. So that was how it should have been and how it should have appeared, and it worked, and they got full marks. Sorry about that. We have had a few little glitches this year due to the fact we moved to the Zoom platform and things have changed, and partly due to the fact I did not check everything thoroughly enough, and so that's my fault, and I'm sorry. Okay, support. Well, we went through this last time. We aren't going to dwell on it now. It's basically the same thing again. It's just going from various pages. But I did get a request from Pon saying what we're going to do about the Chrome browsers and so on like that. And so here is a link to you can see it now, the Pearson lockdown browser. Okay, so if you are a Chrome user or you're going to be using your web design interactively on the internet, Dreamweaver, for example, then here is how you can do it by using our custom browser, which will stop them going to any other browser and which will allow you to provide whitelist, blacklist of software that they can access during the exam. Okay, so that's there. There is some videos to go with it, and I presume a lot of it you're just going to hand over to your tech department and say to the guys, look, sort that out. So it's called the Pearson lockdown browser. Okay, and if you just did that search on the web page, you'd find it. But if you're interested, the actual link, I'll put in chat now. Oh, I've done something totally wrong now. Okay, it goes in here. There's the link to the lockdown browser. And the question asks, what happens if a student has used absolute referencing instead of relative for images? Do we still award the mark? You can award the mark for anything in the code that's still correct. Okay, but if they've used relative referencing, they can't have, if there was a mark, for example, specifically for, if there was a mark being awarded specifically for the images, you wouldn't be able to give it. And obviously you can't give it for the overall efficiency of the solution. So the levels marking is going to be affected by the fact that they're there. But you try and mark as much as you can. Okay, you try and mark as much as you can. Right, that basically, going back to the other, stop that share and go back to sharing that one. That's basically our searching results plus we mentioned. If you weren't here last time, this is very valuable because it gives you a breakdown of all your marks by your candidates by question and part question. So, and the important thing is, obviously you can get this just anyway for an individual, but the point is it aggregates all the marks and tells you where the strong points were, where the weak points were, where you did well, where you did badly. It uses a traffic light system, so it has a green, yellow, red traffic light system on it to show you instantly where things were not good in the overall student performance for your centre. You can also actually then break it down by cohort. So you might have two classes and want to see how the classes are different in their performance. You can do that. And you can compare it against other Pearson schools, Pearson Edexcels in your country in an anonymized way. So it'd be by characteristics. So you could compare it with other schools of similar characteristics to yours. All right. You can also put your mock, if you go and use a mock paper exactly as it is from Pearson, you can then actually put your marks into the system yourself. You do it and you get the analysis. So you can use it yourself to analyze your mock results, which could also be useful. Okay, I hope so anyway. And so therefore, so the results plus works. The student takes exam on paper. Obviously, not all of ours do that. The exam papers are scanned, marked, and then you can just see there very briefly a little picture where most of it's green, but you can see they've obviously highlighted a question where it's actually gone red and things haven't gone so well. Now, this doesn't work, however, for your practical papers, in the sense that you have already got your practical papers, so you can get the mark breakdown still, that will work, but you won't be able to view the scripts because basically you've got the scripts already, and so therefore you can sort of carry on from there. We also have Exam Wizard, mentioned last time, which you can then put together. You can knock together homework exams, a mock exam, whatever you want, using all bits and pieces from past papers, but you get the mark scheme to go with it, so your marking is accurate. So the important thing about there is you can say, well, okay, let's take a theme or a paper, let's knock it together in various ways to suit my needs, but then I can then pull up the mark scheme that was used originally. Access to scripts, we mentioned there. Paid resources, you can get the textbooks. This is the textbook. All right. And teacher resource pack. Again, if you have any problems now, please write down, note this address down now, please. You want the second one, teachingict@pearson.com. Tim covers both computer science and ICT. Either email would work for him, to be honest, but obviously best to send it on the correct one, which is teachingict@pearson.com. But alternatively, you can email him on teachingcomputerscience@pearson.com. I don't recommend ringing. There's very little to be gained by phoning, I would think. But if you email him, he's a man who he'll know the answer. If he doesn't know the answer, he'll know someone that does, and he will direct your inquiry appropriately. Okay, so that's a very important. Right, we have just 5 minutes left, and I am so sorry for that mess up over that last question. We'll see what we can do there. I'll discuss it with Fina after this session. And please ask any questions. We've got just a couple of minutes. One of those nervous moments, you wonder if anyone's actually out there. All right, the textbooks vary by country because of copyright requirements and stuff. So you'll have to talk to your regional advisor at Pearson Publications. I mean, it's a different thing to we're the assessment wing. A completely different organisation is the publications wing. So you need to find out if you go to the Pearson Publications website, find out who to contact in your country, and they'll tell you when the textbook will be available. Nothing else. Okay, folks. Yeah. I should point out, by the way, if the book isn't available in your country, then I mean, I shouldn't perhaps say, I don't know, but you could always look on Amazon, the UK Amazon, and see if it's there. That's another possibility. Okay, folks, we'll stop then. Thank you very much, and I hope that's been useful. If you wait about 24 hours and use that same login that you did today, you will be able to then view a recording, right? And that will be basically it. So, okay, folks, bye-bye.